Internets, welcome back to another episode of Sultans and Sneakers. I'm your host, as always, MAHIN Islam, and on today's show, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with the one and only Ed Latimore. Ed, man, appreciate you coming on the show. You're somebody that I've been watching for a few years. I first heard about you back in 2017, I want to say, and I knew you were a Pittsburgh guy. I know but you've traveled a little bit, so I'm glad I happened to catch you while you're in town. So appreciate you coming on. For the listeners out there, for the viewers, those of y'all don't know about Ed, he's a former professional boxer, an author, a writer, kind of self-made man, and we're going to talk about the worldview around freedom. So I want to, again, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man. Always happy that someone thinks that anything I have to say is worth listening to.
Well, it's always a fear whenever you start a platform, and I've been doing this podcasting for over 4 years, right? And my other podcast, the Mad Mamluks, has been pretty well established. It is a show that people has a lot of credibility. But when you start a new project and you're somebody who has a pretty large social media influence, it's always the thing of it's always surprising when people agree. And it was so easy to deal with you. Can you talk a little bit about that as you've grown? How have you stayed humble?
I never forget why I have the ability to do anything, and that's because people care. People want to listen to what I have to say, and they want to read what I write, and they follow and really invest time into my brand and how I'm growing and building myself and what I have to say. So, I have a personal policy that anybody who reaches out and asks me for an interview on our podcast, I don't turn them down. Now, in case someone is really out there, but those type of people don't really reach out to me, so I haven't had to vet anyone and be yeah, you know what, dude, I said I was going to do this, but I went and looked at your background. I can't really be seen on your show. And on top of that, it's got to be out there for me personally and not for someone who is interested in sponsoring or paying me, because the good news about having such a large following and a humble lifestyle mentality is I have a rough idea of how much money I need to extract from and from what amount of people to have a good life. And I have way more followers and supporters, and always try and distribute value anyway. So I'm not really worried about being canceled or anything like that. So I get to make choices that reflect my value, and that value or my personal values. And my biggest personal value is really giving back. People give me so much time, I can give somebody a little time to appear in their podcast.
But do you foresee a situation in the future where, as you get busier and busier, so let's say you're because right now you're 120,000 Twitter followers or something. So let's say you had as you grow, and you've only been in this game for a few years, it seems where it becomes the issue of time. But I think that may be a different issue, where you're stretched thin, or you might have different priorities at the time. Is that something you thought about in the future
that can happen? Yeah, sure. But the cool thing is I have so much control over my time. I have some plans in the future that will probably remove my flexibility to the degree I've been enjoying it, but that's optional. I want to go and pursue that path. But otherwise, no, I don't foresee that occurring because you guys, everyone is the lifeblood. That would be full from, even if my altruism wasn't the driving motivation for that policy, the other part of that policy, the other thing that leads into it is from a business standpoint. Why would I ever put bad will out there with people who support and more or less, let's not mince words here, finance my life.
Right.
It'd be foolish.
Mm-hmm.
So then I can't see that happening, at least as things are now, but I do anticipate in the future perhaps having my time a little more restricted.
I got you. Well, before I really get into the conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to my boy Nabil Aziz from Becoming the Alpha Muslim and from Dropkick Copy, former guest on this show, because that's where I first heard about you. He was, you were on his show. I think it was the called something injuring the way of the warrior monk or something like that from 2017. And so I've always liked the guests that he's brought on, and I have followed all of them: Pat Stedman, Alex Cortez, etc. People I wasn't exposed to, so I want to give him a lot of credit for exposing me to like a new, almost like a niche, so to speak, a sphere of guys, and who are really out here helping folks, with personal development, etc. And that's telling offline that, as a mechanical engineer by trade, you being a math guy, kind of see things a little similarly, even though I'm a little not less mechanically inclined. So I've used some of your stuff as far as a little bit for my own career and whatnot. But I want to talk about freedom because you had a blog post a few weeks back regarding the 4 levels of personal freedom. Growing up to you, though, because in America, in the United States, when we grow up, we talk about freedom all the time, right? Mm-hmm. What does freedom mean? The freedom, like, our troops are out fighting for our freedom, but what does that even mean, right? And then I read your post, and I'm like, if there's like 4 or 5 levels, like most Americans are at level 0, according to how you wrote about it. And but I wanted to get your thoughts as someone what were your thoughts on freedom growing up? I mean, I know you grew up in the projects in Pittsburgh. Did you feel like freedom was an option for you back then?
Yeah, that's always been a driving goal, because one thing I've always hated the feeling of being restricted and limited. I hated growing up that there were things I could not do. I hated that I had to think about the budget limitations in place for grabbing food or even entertaining myself, and getting older, when I no longer could blame my parents, and then I then lived in a life where I was also still facing those kind of restrictions. It only reinforced my idea, my plan, to be free in time and space, and to be able to do with it whatever I want. Now, like I was saying, one of the things I discussed earlier in the podcast already, where I was saying that there may be a restriction on my time that shows up. Oh, that's if I decide to go to grad school, right? But that's because I decide to. It's not because I feel like I need to further my career. It is strictly for my personal enjoyment. But I could just easily go, you know what? I think I'm going to hang out and continue to stay, travel around the world, just keep doing that. And that would be just as fun. That's my freedom of space, and I've always wanted that. Unfortunately, when I was born in the era with the internet, when I was born, there was no internet, right? In '85, at least not on a commercial scale the way it is. But as I come of age in my 20s and 30s, the internet is turning into this thing, and there's this great social media presence. And anyone who wants to build and develop a following, really build a location-independent lifestyle, that is possible, and I pursued that. And then the other end is the financial freedom. You have to make a certain amount of money so you don't feel restricted in your lifestyle choices and decisions. Now, I'm not the guy that's going to say I'm like rich, because that's just not accurate. But I think rich people interests or hobbies. My idea of fun, I think the most expensive thing I do is like when I travel on vacation, I'll fly like first class. And even sometimes I look at it and go, that's just not worth it. So there's still some prudence and some limitations in place, but those limitations they're just so much smaller. I don't have to deal with anyone I don't want to deal with. I don't have to go to a place I don't want to go to. If I wake up and I'm feeling terrible, now you still have to be accountable for yourself and make sure you can maintain that, and that's a certain amount of work. We're all a slave to something. I've chosen to be a slave to freedom, as paradoxical as that sounds.
I got you. So let's say we were talking offline about high school, right? High school was a first inflection point. At the time, there's still restrictions, right? And then I know you decided to go to college, and you did what, 2 or 3 semesters at the time?
Yeah, 3 semesters, and really, I say, I left, right?
Okay.
But it was more like, they're gonna kick me out. You can't fire me. I quit, sort of deal. And so I left. And then, there's that, and then plunged myself. Not that was a particularly free environment. I mean, certainly more freedom than I had grown up with. Right. But then I plunged myself back into limitations and all that.
So people go to college, though, because I have a mechanical engineering degree, right? And my mindset's a little interesting, because when I was early in college, I did Amway. You're at Amway.
Oh, yeah, man. The old multi-level marketing.
Yeah. I was doing that. So I remember when I was out, and I was talking about this on another show I was invited on, and that's when they were talking about freedom. We're like, yo, don't, a job is a jackass of the boss, JOB, and all this stuff, and, the golden handcuff, all that. So when I was 19, 20, I was hearing about this stuff, and I would go to these Amway meetings, and I was in it for 3 years, and it didn't go too well for my education because I was like, well, I don't really need to go. I don't need a degree. I was just in school, just going through the motions and failing every class, right?
Right.
So then, but I never ended up making money in Amway. Amway had other benefits for me, but the mindset was like, it made sense though. Like, oh yeah, we're not really free because, so there would be this guy up there, man. He would be go to this meeting, and the guy who was like the big dog in the group. So there was always, when you go to an Amway meeting, depends on how big your city, like the organization is, you're gonna have somebody who's like the guy that everyone's trying to aspire to be, right?
Yeah.
Right. So this dude, his name is Phil Davies, and he was from England, but he had lived in Canada long enough, and he didn't have the accent, but he was a sharp dude, slick back, silver hair. Used to work in sales, and then he's been doing Amway at the time. He was doing it for like 13, 14 years. And he, was making a nice 6-figure income, doing it. And he was saying that, I've always wondered why people always go up, why the highway's always flooded at like 6 or 7 in the morning. Everybody decides to go up and go to the same place. And it's like they're lemmings or zombies, right? And they're going to come back the same time, and you see them after work. And I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. I wasn't working yet, but I was like, okay, this dude's obviously making money and having a lifestyle. So that's when I got thought about it, but then I never made any money in it, right? So I kind of like pocketed it. It's like something I did and then moved on. It was really important for my parents to get an education, coming from a South Asian background. So my dad was like, listen, if you ever want to go to business later, you can always go into business later, but at least get a degree, at least have something to fall back on, right? So I went and got a mechanical engineering degree, and the intent is always, okay, well, I'm going to get it. And I forgot what I learned. It's kind of like everything I do with Amway about financial freedom and maybe going into business. Every now and then enter my mind, but I was like, you know what? I got a job in a steel mill. And I've been there over 12 and a half years. And now you're like, man, am I really happy? I'm like 38. And then that stuff always comes back to me. So what are your thoughts about my dad's original point to me back then was like, hey, you want something to fall back on. How is that a hindrance? Sometimes that's what we call security, right? Because you talk about in your article, like, and just to brief the folks real quick, is that there's like basically freedom for you is like you want to live where you want, as long as I want, when I want, doing what I want.
Right.
Right. And most people are, and you're saying there's 4 levels, actually 5 levels, because level 0 is everybody. Right. So if you're working a job, if you're working in a factory or at an engineering firm, trading hours for dollars, and you have 2 weeks of vacation, you're at level 0. Is that right? Level 0? Okay. Just so clear there. But people want to say that, oh, well, there isn't like a, and then that security thing becomes your comfort zone. And that's how I feel, at least. What are your thoughts on that? It's like doing something to have a backup plan, like the mindset there.
So I think that it is foolish to not have a backup, a security plan, whatever. But that's me personally. What I'll say is that it depends on what you're trying to do. For in my situation, I don't use my degree really at all, but I pursued that because I was tired of being broke and not having having some type of freedom is important. And if you can't get the location freedom, you should at least have some financial freedom. Certainly, because I've been very broke as an adult and a child, and you have no freedom. You pretty much don't worry about. I mean, in a weird way, once you below a certain level, you have more freedom than a lot of people in a weird way, because you can't. It doesn't matter. Homeless people are free, but do we really want that kind of freedom? I think that if you can't get location, you should at least get financial. As far as the mentality to kind of stay hungry while you're still secure and following on the path that may not be passionate to you or that does not ignite passion within you, I would say this: you don't necessarily have to be passionate about what you do daily to be happy. There's many sources of happiness, and I'll say it is a lot more difficult to be happy when you're worried about how you're going to pay the bills or eat. And if you take care of that, you can stack up the money and eventually make a move. One thing that I took from what you were just saying when your father said, you can always start a business, your education, get that to have something to fall back on. Do I agree with the general kind of temporal separation that, do this because that'll always be there and come back? Not necessarily. It's not like a sport or something where you do have a real time limit. But the idea is sound, because you can take more risk if you build up a security nest for yourself. You can make moves, you can invest money, you can buy equipment, etc. Think about the equipment here for the show. Well, I'm assuming that was likely paid for, at least in part, if not entirely, by the money made in your job.
Right.
And perhaps that sets you up to do something later.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are strapped for money, you cannot make the best decisions. You're going to be making decisions based out of fear as opposed to out of opportunity. You're looking for ways to survive, not progress. And that is a big difference. And that is why I'm definitely not the anti-security guy. I say get a job and get the highest paying job you can get while pursuing what's important to you. You want to make a trade-off of optimums, something that doesn't eat up so much time that you can't make progress, but not enough time to where you can't make any money.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find that sweet spot, then you have to start going, okay, well, I'm making $70,000 a year doing this, but I only need 40, so maybe I can scale back or drop back part-time or something like that, and then use the rest of the time to work a move. But you definitely don't want to ignore any type of security system that you can put in place that will enable you to take bigger risks.
Yeah, so sometimes one of the things people do that even I'm guilty of as myself is that people as they get raises at work, they tend to adjust their lifestyle to cover, and therefore I was talking to a buddy of mine a couple weeks back. He's like, hey, remember back when we were in college? We didn't make the kind of money we make now. We still lived. We were still comfortable, right? I mean, granted, it was a different way of living, but I mean, and now it's different because I got kids, right, personally. So it's things like that. You want to, I pay for my daughter goes to school that we pay for. It's not public school, right? So these things have to, go into play, but it's just that I think there's a different mindset because for the podcast, right, this specific project, a friend of mine was telling me a couple of weeks ago, he's like, listen, what would happen if you, because I would tell people like this. I'm like, yeah, I might make money off this in 5 years. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know, man, just because, by the time you get, because there's various angles you can make. There's ad revenue. Mm-hmm. Not everyone's going to get the Spotify Joe Rogan deal, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's that, who knows if that's going to open up more, but who knows? That's not what there's ad revenue, but there's no product of the podcast. This podcast is just intellectual exercise. It's talking to people and discussing various issues around some kind of topic, right?
Yeah.
But my buddy was like, well, why do you think it's going to take you 5 years? Is that a limiting belief? When you set a time frame like that, and part of me, what I realized, maybe I'm just setting a 5 year because it's not like tomorrow, and it's not next year, so it doesn't require me to have a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
But it's 5 years, It's I don't have to worry about it yet. Are you? Does that make sense? Am I kind of maybe putting it out there a little bit further enough where I don't really gotta it's there, but I'm not. It doesn't hold me accountable. The sense of urgency doesn't hold me accountable, right?
That sense of urgency is super important, and you have to feel urgent about what you want to pursue, what you want to do,
right?
Because right, there's two kinds of urgency. There's the legitimate, rent's due. We gotta get it done, and then there's the manufactured urgency. And here's the thing: if you don't learn to manufacture that and hold yourself accountable, then you'll never make the right move. It just won't happen because you don't need to. What do they teach us? I can't remember where this rule is from, but the way I heard it put to me in a physics class is that all organisms seek the most energy efficient configuration. Okay. And for non-nerds, listening, what that means is you're going to do the least you can to get the most you can, and really not even the most you can, but to avoid discomfort, and any more than that is unusual.
The path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And
that's probably the easiest way to put it. The path of least resistance, assuming you're still going to make the journey without. And it's so easy. Like we'll use your example with the degree and versus the podcast. Well, there's no urgency on the podcast naturally built in because you have everything else set up and built to run your life. If anything, this is a hobby, right? And I always tell my girlfriend, I don't like my only hobby is watching movies, like because everything else there is some real urgency and there's a real level of progress I want to make when I do it. So like writing. The writing's not a hobby for me. I got the blog set up. I have the newsletter. I have the books I'm publishing. I have the fiction I'm working on. I have the book proposal I'm putting together. There is no hobby in my writing, right? There's no hobby in my chess playing. I study. I look. I try and learn. I look at books. I pay a tutor. Everything there. There's no hobby in my language learning. Every language I put my mind to, it's like, okay, when am I going to be able to communicate in it? When am I going to be able to use it? The only thing I do where I'm just kicking out, partying, I'm watching a movie. I can't even play video games anymore. I tried to. I bought a PS4 because the Final Fantasy VII came out, the remake, and I was like, it's like a gem from my childhood. I'm going to play it. That PS4 sat there so long I couldn't take it back to the store. Never opened it. Couldn't take it back. They said it's beyond a return date. So I went and sold it on eBay. And I was like, here you go. Oh, not on eBay. I sold it on Facebook. I put a thing out. Somebody said, hey, interested in this? And went and sold them. So you have to, man. And here's the thing. I'm at a position where if I wanted to, I could, take a month or two off or just BS.
Just watch everything on Netflix.
Right.
Yeah.
But that, even my Netflix shows, let me tell you what I've been watching on Netflix.
What you been watching?
I watched this show called Untitled Chapter, which is this Spanish series about a murder on the season. It's actually, Castilian Spanish, so Spanish from Spain. And then I watched Narcos Mexico, and now I'm watching the original Narcos. So I even those I'm working on my Spanish. That's why I'm watching them. I mean, like the idea of just sitting back and before that I hadn't watched any. I mean, like people say, watch this series, it's good. Watch that series, it's good. I'd occasionally watch like something silly. I watched 90 Day Fiance with my girl. That's like really our like trash TV. But in terms of me just sitting there watching stuff on Netflix, I don't even do that.
Yeah.
Even working out, I had to like change my mindset about working out when I stopped fighting, because I couldn't make this a hobby. It was either I'm training to achieve something, or why am I in the gym?
Right.
So I had to, so now what I do is I set running goals, lifting goals, body fat goals, everything like that. But otherwise, I know I'm not gonna give it the attention. It's just it's taking up space. I'd rather sit here and do something else without a goal.
Okay.
So, but the point of all of that is that when you take on something you want to accomplish, some goal, some even if it's not going to get you more free, right? You have to take a professional perspective on it, as opposed, amateurs have hobby, professionals don't.
Right. So I've tried to make the podcast. So Matt, when I did the old podcast, I remember my producer's wife used to always tell us like, "Man, you guys didn't stop treating it like a hobby." I'm like, it's a hobby, but then it's like we're putting so much work into it, right? It's like, but I guess so part of the challenge when I talk to people about a podcast, because the podcast in and of itself doesn't make money, right?
Right.
But there's probably skills around that can be monetized.
Absolutely. Look, putting words on a screen does not make me money. What makes me money is putting together things to sell. Taking products to sell based on people who like what I write about. I have many odds on my website and my social media, so selling advertisement, promotion, etc. That's a big way. And then on top of that, sometimes people don't want to consume the written word, so I can charge for consulting. That's three streams right there,
right?
Off of the words that I'm putting down, and then and only then, right after enough people are in. Right, then someone might go, I'll pay you to write this book or whatever. And even still, now though that's distribution and selling it. So it's not just like this the sounds and just doing the podcast or just doing the website. That won't make you any money.
Mm.
What will make you money is eventually having an audience, and the only way to build an audience, this is, I think a lot about this, right? Because people, that's actually a subject of my next post, just kind of an overview of online business. And more important than monetization, I was telling somebody this, just one of my clients, this about Twitter. More important than monetization is growth. Because as long as you have new people coming in and seeing your work, you got a new potential customer. Mm-hmm. And then after growth, what's more important? Monetization or no, not monetization yet. You need to establish a reputation of excellence. You need to continue to put out good work, because your average person, I read, is not going to buy on the first, second, third, fourth exposure. They're going to spend money about a seventh exposure to you. So you want to make sure all of those exposures are great, that the content you put out is excellent, that the insights you produce are great. I mean, there are people still follow me on Twitter who still won't follow me, who've been like just kind of lurking, dropping in here. But I'm not going to let up, because I understand what that channel does for me. And this is my approach to all things. I know that just the consistent, this is just for business, right?
Yeah.
Anything selling money, anything to do with selling based on me and how I exist. You have to consistently put out quality information and with a focus on growth. And those two things play together very well. If you put out good stuff, people tend to learn about you. And by, good is subjective, but generally engaging and valuable. Valuable being that you educate, entertain, inspire, or solve problems directly. And if you do that in an engaging manner, and engaging things tend to be entertaining, and then then you're gonna be okay. That's just a matter of time. Once you get that formula down,
right?
I mean, the world is yours.
Yeah. So, you mentioned the idea of putting out quality content, being consistent. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Gary V model, where he's talking about like just hustling and putting out like tons of like content, right?
Yeah.
And not being hung up on quality. Only, I think he says this. People, I think, misconstrue it a little bit, because I have some buddies that we feel like we all try to follow the Gary V mindset, like as far as like putting out content. So like, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but so for example, like off this podcast itself, this podcast will be a piece of macro content. So something you might say throughout the show, I would probably pull some quotes out and put it on Twitter, citing you as micro content. Little clips is micro content. Some kind of like TikTok dance or some shit I come up with might be like, I don't know, maybe it's gonna be me like watching one of your boxing videos and imitating you or something as a TikTok video, and be like dry as a kind of marketing tactic. That's like micro content, right? But he's saying don't overthink stuff, because that way you let your audience dictate to you what quality is. But I think some people miss that and say like, oh, I can put out crap. And people, like, for example, I was talking, there was another guy who was, I know he follows the Gary V model, and he was putting out like just cringy shit on Instagram, like nonstop daily. Like I was sharing this to Nabil. I'm like, yo, Nabil, check this out, man. And he was like, this is super cringe. It's like, it's all the social justice, kind of like social justice stuff right now with what's going on with George Floyd. And it's like slogans. It's like something you might put on Twitter, but it's like in slows. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to. He's a good dude. He means well. I don't want to like say too much and hear this and like. But it's like this. People I think need to understand that. I don't think Gary Vee is telling people to put out shit.
Right.
It's not the point. But I think it's like the consistency thing as far as if we want to like explore podcasts a little bit. So think about some of the skill sets. So if you host a podcast, you're able to have a conversation, right?
Right.
So there might be an opportunity, maybe public speaking. Who knows, right? Where you get paid for that. There might be an opportunity for Nabil's idea. For me, was like, hey, you interviewed like I've probably interviewed probably about 150 people in my life in the last 4 years, right? Wow. So there's all these guests that I've had, like, hey, maybe you can write a book. Like Tim Ferriss has that book called Tools of Titans, right?
Yeah.
So something like that where you have like groups of people, the activists, artists, etc., and have like a 1-page thing and then like sell that as a book, right? But then I would have to learn writing, but like I guess that comes with the territory. You have to like kind of figure it. But let me ask you, when you started writing, did you do it as a hobby or was there a purpose behind it?
There's always a purpose. Like always. Now, I've had many iterations of my blog and tried different things, and this is the one I've had the most success with. And but each moment was a learning moment. You learn what works, what doesn't, how to write, how to craft things, and even some of my older posts. People have been following me for a while. I mean, they're aware of the evolution, and I've become an objectively better writer and communicator, and that's only because of just consistent, always trying to do my best, always trying to learn from someone, and I'm still always learning. That never stops. It turns into a logarithmic curve rather than an exponential one, but you're always learning.
For those who don't know, it means just kind of plateauing out, right? It's like the curve flattens. Like
it means that when your growth is exponential, that means when you put in some amount of time, you tend to get I almost used exponential again, asymmetrical results. You get more out than you put in, right? When you reach a logarithmic point, it takes a lot more effort to get the same amount of growth. And then that growth is even smaller than it was before, and then that continues. Think of it this way, guys who lift. It's a lot, if you never lifted before, it's a lot easier to go from a 100-pound bench press to a 200-pound bench press, and in shorter amount of time, that will be to go from 200 to 300 and 300 to 400, and most of you will never put up 500 pounds on a bench press, no matter how hard you train. You just don't have the genetics or the time, or you've maxed out, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of thing. I don't even remember what I was saying.
No, you're talking about the writing, when you started writing with a purpose.
Yeah. So I've always had a purpose. I've always wanted to teach and put value out there, but you have to learn. First of all, you have to have like material to draw from, and this is something I see a lot of guys fail on. They have not lived a life where they have something worthwhile to say. I can't fix that. There's no program that's going to fix life experience. You just got to go get it and do it. What you do, or what you can learn rather, is how to express yourself in a way that's engaging. You can learn the mechanics of grammar and with the use of stylistic devices to make your writing more interesting. You can learn these things. You can learn the SEO so that when you do write, you have a much better chance of being discovered. All these things work together. But for me, it was never about a hobby. Like I said, I just have never had the hobby mindset. Even when I played video games as a kid, that was about it. But even that had kind of a purpose as a conversation piece and talking to people and bonding.
You can monetize that directly now, right?
Oh yeah, now Twitch is incredible. We just live in a crazy world. But for me, it was always about making something, doing something, saying something, and people recognize that I'm putting out solid information. It's just, maybe if it was a hobby, whatever, but I love it too. So in that sense of how people think of hobby work, like I love it, but I just can't like something and not attempt to get better at it. And I think when you start working with that intent, that moves it out of the hobby arena, and then it moves it into a pursuit with purpose.
Yeah, I got you. So in the beginning, you recognize that you were not as skilled a writer when you start, right? But like you should still put it out there in a sense. Like,
absolutely.
I guess what's the thing called imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're worried about, like we were talking, like, so one thing that I'm trying to do is there's a few ways to monetize a podcast. One way might be to like produce for somebody, right? You might be, if someone has a subject, they have an idea, but then they don't, or they might, and I've made money before hosting shows, but sometimes you feel like, well, if I'm going to charge for this, it has to be like I have to be on top of it, where it's like, you're not like, but how do you balance that? Because I feel like there's an ethics behind charging for something for somebody, and giving them a good product. So I don't know how many guys, I know guys who have hired people for like web development, and they would pay them $1,000 to like develop their website, and it was trash.
Right.
Right. How do you, as someone who's trying to monetize this thing, how do you like I guess how do you figure that out? Or is it just a trial and error thing?
Well, I mean, you do some research and you see one who's charging and who isn't also, and you look at what works and what the best product looks like. Because if you don't have anything to compare to, you don't have a point to aim at. And then once you do that, then it's just a matter of making the steps in the right direction. Getting the right equipment, making sure your presentation is on point, doing the work. All those things come together, but you need that aiming point. You need to see who's there and then copy what they're doing. It's the same thing. It's like self-publishing. It's very hard to tell if you do your job correctly. It should be close to impossible for the average person to know the difference between a self-published book and one published by a house. And we have the technology and the ability to do that. You got to invest money. Like my first book, definitely can tell it's self-published, but not as bad as some other products. Second book, though, I had time and effort. I had time and resources. You can't tell, and I'm really proud of that. And now that's the standard going forward, and the standard you're always aiming for. It was the standard I was aiming for in the first book. I just didn't know, right? But you still got to make moves and still take strides. And because I was doing that, people still get so much value out of it. Even though to me, I'm actually redoing it because I didn't like what my abilities were and the resources I had to make it good. But people still get value out of it. But the book still is responsible for an extra $1,000 a month that I don't even think about. It's just selling on Amazon.
Okay. So let's say, so you started your boxing in your early 20s, right? Mm-hmm. So even when you started boxing, did you have this thing that like, this is going to pay off, not just in boxing, but in some other way, some experience that were you thinking that far down the road back then?
I knew this. I know that, or rather I knew, whenever you attempt to do something that requires a disciplined commitment to improve, then you will usually get better at that and also get a host of positive externalities that are associated with it. Many of those you cannot predict, but trying to do something is a lot better than that. You'll get something from it. I couldn't predict when I first started boxing, for example, that there would be a host of podcasts and people like that who would be interested in having me on, to talk about fighting. Couldn't predict that. I also couldn't predict that I was going to have to sell my own tickets when I became a pro. Didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And because I had to adapt and do well, I learned the skills of selling real time in person, how to deal with people. Had no idea there would ever be the program that would set me up to live in LA when I first started fighting. And I didn't start out to become part of that program. I just started out to become as good as I could. And I kept with that goal. And then there are just things that happen along the way, opportunities that pop up. And those give you options in life if you're looking for them and you're ready to take advantage. Same with my physics degree. I had no intention of becoming a tutor. But because I had studied physics, when I needed work, I could go do that. Okay. And that opened up, that saved my life. Or not saved my life in like the literal sense, but in the financial sense, very much so. Right. So you don't know exactly what will happen. You just know that trying to do something that makes you better tends to have a payoff in a bunch of other areas that you can't even see or predict yet. And if you just keep on it, then you'll have something to show for it. And this is something when I look at guys who haven't made any progress in life, well, what have you tried? Generally speaking, not much.
So that's also the mindset behind the chess and the languages.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, I put so much energy. I put a decent amount of energy into my chess and my Spanish, and what are random opportunities that have shown up. I never thought in a million years I'd be featured on a chess magazine, ever.
Have been?
I've been in two. I've been in Chess America and Chess Life, and that's because of the combination of me boxing and then putting my stuff out that I write about in chess and just being an enthusiast of the game and letting people see that and making connections on social media as well in that. No, that was never the intention. And what's that do? That's one more piece of the digital footprint that's going to go and contribute towards what I'm trying to do with some other stuff down the line, like attain a book deal. With Spanish, the goal was to communicate, and my communication is coming along. It's certainly way better than it's ever been. But I never, ever imagined that I would be interested in like going to places and staying there. And I wanted to, but I never knew I would. But it made learning Portuguese when I was there so much easier. And, it's one of those things you can go, I can do this, I can do that, I can communicate here. And that opens up other opportunities that you were not necessarily looking for, but they're there.
I see. So, and it seems like there's got to be some kind of authenticity coming that inspires you wanting to learn something. So let's say, for example, everyone's trying to learn coding now, right? Python or whatever. Right. Let's say, for example, let's say that's not, you have no idea what it, or you're like repulsed by it, but then just doing it. So there's got to be something authentic. So like, let me give you an example, right? So I've got a friend who just started beekeeping as a hobby. Oh. And then also she's bought a house, but it's like she's got to do her own gut rehab, and she's doing it. She enjoys it, and she's learning on the fly. But these are two things that she are adding to her toolbox, right? That she's enjoying, but she's also becoming, as a result of her doing it, is becoming an expert, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what people need to think about is like as they are growing their interest is like think about things like for example, one of the things that that was interesting about you for me was like you were living in Portugal, right? This idea of being like a digital nomad. So
which is funny because I never I don't think of myself at all as a digital nomad in that space, but I suppose technically speaking, right, I was like, I'm gonna go off and go be in Portugal and parade around the country, and I'm in a position where my income does not matter where I'm at. Okay, so I guess I'm a digital nomad,
right?
I never thought of myself. I still don't think of myself that way.
Yeah, and it just happens. Portugal seems to be a spot for a lot of digital nomads. Like people like to live there.
It's a beautiful country with a very low cost of living, and what you get for that cost of living is incredible. To this day, man, I think about the eggs. Every egg there is brown and with the hard shells and a deep orange yolk. Basically, what they do in America is selling you on the organic stuff, but everything's organic because it's all it's taken from the countryside. And for a carton of eggs, it's like €1, and that works out to be like $1.25. But for eggs of that quality, man, you never get that. That's a robbery. For $1.25, if they sold them that cheap, you get the cheap white eggs with the thin shells and the high yellow yolk and everything. But no, it's a great, very, very safe, clean mostly. The public transportation is amazing. I really remember enjoying that. I got super sick on my birthday. Like I had to go to the hospital, and my ER bill was $150, and like $150 for a hospital trip. Man, you can't even
without insurance.
No, without insurance, just paid it right there. And then they were worried. They were like, "Are you gonna be able to afford this?" And I was like, "I'm good." Just we are very grateful for your country. That.
For sure. No, so like take me back. So you're talking about, so most people are living at this level 0, right? Of free, where you can't execute any of this. So talk to me about your personal journey going from 0 to 1. You saying going from 0 to 1, and people should read the post, right, to get the context. But you said going from 0 to 1 is the hardest step. Is that what you?
Yeah.
Right. What is that? So basically, is 1. You said you say you're at level 2 right now, the 4.
I'm definitely level like comfortably in level 2. Like
okay.
Very much so. I suppose if I really wanted to be reckless, but I'm not reckless, so I'm not in level 3, but I could like touch level 3 if like a deal showed up somewhere.
Yeah.
And I chose like monetary markers of travel and living because those are the two things. You got to get to a place and you got to live there. After that, everything else kind of adjusts. more or less back to what you're used to, but spare some stark differences like going from Lisbon to New York City. Yeah, you're not going to be very happy with your daily cost of living increase before we even talk about your rent and utilities. But level 0 is just, you're not in the freedom game. You are, as I defined it in a post, you're not location independent. You have to be someplace and you have to show up someplace to make a living. Your finances are more or less budgeted out. At the very least, you can't generate income at this moment. You got to wait till payday. And so like I said, budget it out. And there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle. I make that very clear. And I also make it clear that our civilization depends on most people being at level 0.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important to remember. That's why I'm never the guy. Look, if you want to be free, more power to you. I'll give you whatever help. But I'm not going to shun the guy that's a police officer, a doctor, a pilot, an engineer, because we need those people. So people like me can exist. And that's one of those things, like I was talking about it earlier in the podcast, how I never turned down a podcast because I recognize that I exist because everyone else is interested.
Right.
My freedoms exist. I can go to a hotel whenever I want to, get on a plane whenever I want to, because someone else can't do this. Now, it would be anarchy if everyone decided they wanted to be, to stay at home.
Right.
Or
but just like human nature, that not everyone's going to do it. People are going to.
Oh, yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, you got to have a certain personality. You certainly have to have a larger appetite for risk than the average person, for sure. You have to be willing to do what I call work of uncertainty, where you're not sure what the outcome will be, if there will be a positive one at all, but not even, that it may backfire, but you have to be willing to engage in that work for periods of time, but no guaranteed payoff. So it's like good, like contrast, like we'll just say college and the work path,
Yeah.
That's a pretty direct path that's supposed to have a level of security. In fact, people select majors very often based on projected salary that they'll receive. So it's just like, all I got to do is show up, finish these classes. Now, it'll be challenging, but I get through them, and then I go get this job, and it's going to be a certain amount, and I can expect a certain raise, and there's a level of security. And then, they take my taxes, and then they give me some back at the end of the year, and then that comes some health care as well, so I'm taken care of.
Right.
The hospital, that's great. When you are level 1, where you first break out, you don't have any of that. I mean, like, maybe,
so at 1, you're basically not working for anybody no more, right?
Okay. That is the key kind of distinguishing feature, that you don't work for. Now, you can certainly work out that arrangement. That's happening a lot more where people get to work at home, but they're still beholden to someone.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like, level 0.5 if you work for someone, but it's distance work. But if you are like on your own, doing your own thing, whether that be with a product, personal brand, or consulting, etc., then you are very much at level 1.
Okay.
Now,
at 0, you were doing the whole. I know you worked at Amazon warehouse. What was your last level 0 job?
So I didn't really have a typical path from 0 to 1, as I like to tell people when I discuss this. I was baptized by fire, because the path that kind of happened was from so I was working at a bank for a little while, in up to 2014-ish, 15. And then I got signed with Rock Nation for boxing, so they're paying me a stipend per month. Plus now I'm like earning legit money when I fight. I'm still getting money from the military because I'm in school and I'm serving. So I don't have a job in the traditional sense that most people think of it, but I'm definitely not Like I can't just disappear for 6 months. I gotta fight to earn that money. Otherwise, I got contract issues. I gotta show up to the base and do my drilling. Otherwise, I got issues, right? But that was all going on. And then 2016, the end of 2016, I get out the Army and I lose a fight and get cut. So I'm like wiped out, and there's no income coming in. I got to figure this thing out quick. And so I got a quick job working for Amazon, and that lasted for 2 weeks. And I said, I'm going to figure this out.
Why? Because that job just sucked.
So okay. So there were 2 parts to the job, which were technically not the same job, but they operated out of the same facility, and they were both run by Amazon. First was I worked in the factory on 4-hour shifts, sorting packages as they came in. Like $10 an hour. Show up, they just put you where you're gonna be. You sort packages. Easiest $10 an hour you'll ever make in your life, right? And then I got the truck where I was delivering. And I said, my first excitement was, oh, yay, I'm not going to be in a warehouse all day. And then I was like, no, I'm going to be in a truck all day. And I got to make these delivery. And they changed a lot because of how bad it was. But they had us delivering. You got a certain load of like maybe 100 packages, and you got assigned to an area. And you had to deliver them all before sundown. Mm-hmm. They made sure they got a lot out of you, like as much money as they could squeeze out of you. And then there was a malfunction with my truck. It rolled down a hill and under someone's driveway. Fortunately, no one was hurt. So happy no one was hurt. But what ends up going on then, and this is when I knew I had to leave, is they just sent out another van to get the packages out the van, and we had to roll around and deliver them. And I'm like, you're not gonna like check on me, make sure I'm okay? And they're like, no, I mean, you good, right? and then that was like the day before Thanksgiving, and then I said, you know what? This is it. I'll figure this out, and I didn't come back because they give you a mandatory day off after anything, and then I said, you know what? I'm not coming back, and I did a lot of hustling, man. I was fortunate. I took one more fight that year for like $500. I got my first like consulting client.
You said $500?
Oh, there's no money in boxing. No, anyone who fights it, there is no money in boxing. When I had a contract and I was fighting, I was earning $4,000 a fight. $1,000 of which was immediately gone because I had to pay a trainer and manager, and then Uncle Sam comes in and gets his cut eventually. So at the end of the day, I take $2,000. I fight 6 times a year. There's no money. They're like, you don't fight for money. People think you do, but rather a job is just easier. You got a job.
Right.
Like, it's not as entertaining, but it is. But there's no money in boxing. So that job, when I finished that, I said I got to figure this out, and I tried to get different jobs, but I also wanted to go back and finish my degree because I wasn't finished in school, so I needed to figure something out that would allow me to go to school but still make enough money. No one wanted to hire me part-time. I got quite a bit of full-time offers because at this point I got like three years in on my degree. I got military experience. I got intern experience. Man, I've got now I've got like a skill set. Someone was come out to the training. You start you at $60K, and I'm like, okay, this is actually tempting, but I won't be able to finish my degree. First off,
okay.
Secondly, you want me to work like 60 hours a week, man? Like I have other plans for life.
Yeah.
So I figured out to do the tutoring, and I was running my own business basically at that point. Made all my money from there. I self-published my first book. I started selling ad space on my website. Very much a baptism by far. Like I really figured it out at the
2016 is it when you left the Amazon gig?
Yes.
Okay.
2016.
And then when did you and so within about a year?
Not even because this was the end of 2016.
Okay.
Like I lost my fight on the 23rd of September.
Yeah.
Started working at Amazon a week later. Stopped working at Amazon the week before Thanksgiving, like around there.
Okay.
It wasn't even a week later. It took a while to get a job. So I probably worked at Amazon most of November, but I didn't have anything in October.
Okay. And then 2017, you started the tutoring thing, and then you started the self-publishing the book.
2017 is when I started tutoring. That same month on February 17th, I self-published my first book. And then things just started moving along.
I mean, at the time, remember you were talking offline, is that, you had like pretty, like your living expenses weren't that high, right?
Right.
You were sharing, I think you were sharing a spot. So, and you're in Pittsburgh still?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're in Pittsburgh. So cost of living's a little down. So, but again, it's like now, I mean, I want people to understand this is like not a long time ago.
No, not a long time ago.
That's the crazy thing to think about. Sometimes when you hear about people's stories about how they got to these levels, and you're at level 2, when you're at level 0, like literally, this is we're recording this show. It's June of 2020.
Yep.
So 4 years ago, you were at 0. Less than 4 years ago. I don't know where you were at June of 2017, but probably just getting to level 1.
I remember June of 2017. What I remember about that, because memories come up, and my girlfriend's birthday is June 18th, so I tend to remember a lot what goes on around there because I'll take her to do something or have a good time. And that year, I took her to a bed and breakfast and a tour of Falling Water, and I did it all on my dime. And how did I make this money? It was all from tutoring money, and I was making a decent amount from tutoring and from book sale money, and on top of that, I had enough money to pay rent. And that was also the first. Then that summer, I also got a ghostwriting gig for $5,000, and I made my first affiliate sale for $500. So things really kind of moved, and that's when I really learned. I was like, okay, you gotta kind of be like a shark, always moving and always looking to grow, but also you have to simultaneously be growing and making deals and moves, and
right.
And
you're like hustling. That's the whole, and then that's where the whole, like, you're famous for the quote, "Hustle like a crackhead."
Oh yeah,
Of course, eat what you kill, right? So when would you say you were comfortably in phase 1 of this process? Like level
comfortably 1? Where I was like not really worried about anything. We'll go with like November, December of 2017. Like comfortably, definitely arrived there like April.
Wow.
That year. But in terms of comfortably, yeah, like when we went.
So that's a year from being an. That's crazy.
Yeah, because when I was in Lisbon, we went to the first time I went to Lisbon was we spent the New Year there, coming from 2017 to 2018. We flew out Christmas Day, landed there. Flew out Christmas Eve, landed there Christmas Day, stayed there to the New Year, came back. And I remember I had a few distinct thoughts, not one or two. One, I remember watching my affiliate commissions coming on a piece I wrote. And I'm just like, I am going to earn back while I'm on vacation everything I spent while I'm on vacation. That's crazy, right? That blew my mind. That was the first thought. My second thought, I remember waking up in a hotel in Montestado, and it looked out over, I think that's the Atlantic Ocean. I think that's the ocean at that point, no longer the river. And it was, the sun was had risen, and we were in a hotel. And I remember thinking, why am I going home? This past month, I made like $8,000 that month, and I was like, why am I going home? Oh, I gotta finish my degree. And I looked at my girlfriend and I said, and you still have a job. So what's funny is my mind started churning. I was like, I eventually want to get back here. I gotta make enough, because I think you're my ticket back here anyway. Plus, I like you.
Yeah.
So I gotta make sure I make enough so that when we do move, that it's all that I could cover us. So there was that thought as well. I also remember that was the first time that I have a really cool jacket. I love this jacket. I love both jackets actually. But I went into the store. I was walking down. This was in Porto, and I was walking down the street, and I looked and I said, I'm gonna come back and buy that. And I did. I came back the next day and bought it and another jacket and some shoes and stuff. I was like, it was a good fit. I was like, okay, I am awesomely like paid for myself over there. It was a nice experience. I mean, this was very awesome. But that I would say, like, in terms of how I measure, level 1, which is you can live comfortably in any part of the world, and you can fly to any part of the world with without much of a. I think level 1 is where you can live comfortably in any part of the world.
You're saying $8,000 a month, and $8,000 a month is a lot of money in America.
Oh yeah.
Are you talking about in Lisbon? You were in Lisbon at the time?
Yeah, we were just for a week, but there was.
So there's no comparison. Yeah, so you're at this point you're killing it. And then so what is level 2? I guess what is level 2? What are the characteristics of level 2?
So level 2 in terms of like we measure the measurable is you can travel anywhere, live anywhere. I say 90% of the places you can live.
So not New York, not London, Tokyo.
Right, not New York, London, Tokyo, San Fran, but most places. Like you can live there comfortably and relocate comfortably if you needed to. And you can travel anywhere you needed to when you need to. Those are the two main financial measurements. But mindset wise, I think I say that's when people think you're not doing anything because they can't figure because this is, I got a lot of friends at this point where they were like, okay, clearly he's not starving. But he's not working either. I can't figure it. I mean, I got everything at that point from your girlfriend must be paying for everything. And I'm like, it's really the other way around. But forget that. Or like, you must be rich, which is like, because people can't make sense of it. Because at that point, it's not particularly obvious. And the change is so subtle. Because why I have the financial measurements in there and I just use travel and life is because generally speaking, like I know a plane ticket, let's say if I went from like here to Houston, I know that is going to cost me roughly, if I go, well, no, I'll use a real example. I had a meeting in Atlanta. I was going to meet a bunch of guys. It was like a link up and I waited too long to buy my ticket. This is normally a $300 flight, maybe $4. I paid $1,100 for my ticket. And that sucks. But I did it. I was like, okay, whatever. Right? Yeah. Like, I mean, because that's what it costs.
You're right.
So I'm not stressed about it. I was more angry at myself for waiting that long.
Yeah.
And having to pay so much for a thing I know.
It's like when you get a credit card bill you forgot to pay. Like it's not like gonna make you poor. But you're just pissed at yourself.
Right. That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go with that. You know that and use that as kind of a base that you can just get on a plane and go to a place.
Right.
Drive and go to a place. At this point now, my friend circle now is more or less non-local. You know, I'm friends with people in Cali, Texas, Florida. You know, we're not even talking about I can just guys that I can pull up on Twitter, and meet up legit people I talk to, like I'm coming through, you wanna hang out or whatever, and that's because most people think their friend circle is who's like right down the street over. Like, no, I'm picking and associating people, different minds, and just hop on the plane to go see them.
That's exactly So I know. So like when you started doing podcasts, when you like people started inviting you on your show, and then you were speaking in conference. I think you spoke was that the 21 conference?
Yeah.
Was that in level 1? Did that start in level 1, kind of?
When I first spoke at the 21 convention, that was 2018. That was the first time. Yeah, but at that point, I was firmly in level 2 because I actually remember that week. I think I made $10,000 that week while I was down there, and it was because I had just opened up a program and I was like, oh, let's see how this goes, and now I know. So now that's a very consistent revenue stream because I understand how to work it, just different iterations.
Okay.
But yeah, I remember that happening there. And I remember 2018 was a great kind of influx year. If you want to go like level 2 to level 3. are more comfortable on level 2. You see, this is where it's weird because I'm not quite sure where to be where I am. I would say, here's what I'll say: mentality wise and public perception wise, level 3 without a doubt in terms of how I relate, interact with people, and all the things I say in the article. But in terms of the measurement that I put up, that is important to hold yourself to kind of an external standard. I don't think I'm quite there. I might be sandbagging it. I tend to do that with certain things.
Right.
But the point is that in 2018, some notable things happened. One, I really more or less figured out how to manufacture dollars, which is a thing that I think is important to learn. It's like, okay. And, you know, it's funny, my girlfriend were just having this discussion. She's a saver and it has great financial habits, like way better than mine.
Right.
Okay? But I was explaining to her, I was like, okay, like, that's why we're a good team, because I just look at a problem. I go, okay, I need to generate money to solve this. How do I do that? And I have the base and system in place to go ahead and do it. Like, I can have a cell, like perfect example. When everything happened with COVID, she's in the travel industry. So she's hit probably the hardest in terms of income loss.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, we're effectively a single income house for the next year. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we're moving and getting a new place and everything. And I had just invested all this money into my website. So I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't put that 30 grand down. Okay, here we are. But it was okay because
you said 30 grand?
Oh yeah, my website I have now and all the branding behind it, 30 grand. And you know what 30 grand gets you? It gets you a blog with a bounce rate of lower than 80%, which someone has. The fastest website, we looked and compared it to every other kind of tool. The programs I have on the site now that are just there, and I'm not even maximizing that. That's coming though. Well, now that they're doing like between 1,000 and 1,500 a week, just passive. I'm not pushing on Twitter. Yeah, I just wake up and I sell because people came and saw it. So a lot of good stuff, but it's an investment. Anyhow, I did all that for my site. So I'm sitting there, I'm looking at like, okay, if I did it under the impression that like, you know, I wouldn't be covering rent of a new place by myself. But now I was like, all right, I got to generate enough money to do this. And on top of that, I wanted to get into some PR stuff. So I hired a PR firm and they cost $3,000 a month. All that. So what I do, I have a sale for some products. I throw it together, boom, and just like that. Magic, you know, the 10K one weekend, 15K next weekend, 12K. And it's like, and you got to remember, If I'm moving it, let's say my sell price is normally $50.
Right.
So to get $10,000 in a week, and I gotta sell 200 units of my product.
Right.
And that seems like a lot. I'm sure it does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But 200 sales is less than 1% of my following, and at the rate it grows, for example, I'm on pace to gain about 4,000 new followers on Twitter this month. 200 of what percent is 200 to 4,000? Well, we know that 400 is 10% and have that. So that's 5%. So I gain 5% of what I need to sell with this Twitter. So, and someone will buy.
Right. Okay.
And I put out good products, so the reviews are good.
Yeah.
You know, and the book sales are coming in. I just gotta, you know, so this whole system gets built. And it's a system designed for freedom. I don't have to sit there and worry about counting inventory, running the store, whatever. Nope.
I mean, you wrote the book. It's an ebook, right? Or did you download, you know?
Well, I have a few ebooks. Okay. Like 3 ebooks that pull in the bulk of the revenue. It wasn't all revenue for
But it's not like you have a box of books in your house.
Right.
That you're shipping out yourself. Yeah, right. People go and order it and boom, they get it.
Sometimes I'll wake up and I have made $300-400 overnight, which is nothing crazy, but like
that's just the idea of like what's called residual income. And that's what when I hear your story, I remember when even Amway isn't true residual income because it's still volume. You have to keep that recurring thing going out. It's like sales, right?
Yeah.
Like when you in sales, nice thing about sales people say is like, okay, you get commission pay, but then you got to keep grinding every month to get new commission. It's like, what did you do for me last month? You created this one product, the book, right?
Yeah. And the kid get just paid.
Yeah, right.
I mean, and it's a good piece of material. That's one of the reasons it works. If I was selling garbage, just like we were talking about quality.
Right.
If I was selling garbage, I might get the bag one time.
Yeah.
And
people will write, they're like, man, this dude sucked. Like,
right.
We're not going to go back, spend money with him anymore, right?
But on the flip side, I put together a product, an ebook that has brought me in. People have had me on their podcast to talk about the ebook. Interviews. People want to affiliate. I have to ignore most affiliate requests because they don't fulfill the requirement that I would have to do it. But standing behind my name and what I do, it's an easy sell and it's a great product and help a lot of people out.
Right.
And I just have a good time with it, and it shows the power of creation because then I can use it to fuel other things. Because like at the end of the day, like this is not the end game, not even close. This is just okay. Fuel this, move along, pay off some college debt.
Sure. Yeah,
At this kind of slow, like if I was being hyper aggressive, I could like pay it all off. But if I was being hyper aggressive,
So a level 3, what is level 3? Is that level 3 is like you can live anywhere in the world?
Level 3, yeah, anywhere in the world, and yeah, like I feel comfortable with that. Like I don't think. I don't want to live like in a Champs-Élysées or something like that, or like in Times Square,
or like in the Burj Khalifa in Dubai.
Right. Oh goodness. Okay. So yeah. So we ain't at level 3.
Yeah,
right?
but like you said you've dabbled at level 3. Like how did that look like for you?
For me, that's how I feel when I fly a first class flight, man.
You know what? That's the thing, man. I was talking to my buddy a few months back. Right, we were talking about, and I was like, one of my dreams is to like fly my parents to Bangladesh, to Dhaka, on an Emirates first class flight.
Yeah, like that's a great kind of thing, right?
You know how much it costs? It's about $11,000, I think, something like that, right? And because when you fly economy, it's all right. I mean, Emirates isn't a bad airline, but so even economy is nice. But like, I would just like and I've seen some of the video. Like Casey Neistat does those reviews of like he's got the $18,000 one, and I'm like, I think there's an $18,000 suite you can fly on, but from New York to Dubai. But I looked at it. I looked at the price. I'm like, all right, so I would need for me and like my parents be $33,000 or something.
On a flight. Well,
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so
right?
three people, right?
Like no investment. Like in other words, like no ROI. Like
but it's a thing of giving. It's like because how my parents are older, right? It's like you talk about you speak about your mother in other shows. It's like there's this idea of like giving back because she struggled to raise you, and same with my parents, right? It's like something about giving back. Like, all right, this is something that would fulfill me. That would be the thing. But it's also a measure of for me to drop $33,000 like that would mean I'm in a good financial position.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a sign.
It's a thing. Like you're not gonna miss it. So yeah, that's like the level. Man, that's probably like level 4 to be honest.
Is it really? Yeah. Wow.
Where you're able to like not miss $30,000. That's another cool thing. Like the amount of money you can miss. I remember there was that number was firmly 0. In fact, if you want to be technical about it, it was negative. Like I need to find some money, that kind of thing. And then it slowly moved up, and like in terms of an impulse purchase, I think my impulse purchase point is like realistically like $500. Like if I see something that looks like it'll be useful, even remotely, then I'm like, okay,
whatever, yeah.
Because here's the thing, and this is something that is. I have to maybe rein in. Who knows? I'm not because I don't buy garbage. I don't even drink. I don't do anything to kind of waste money. But like those things can occur because the tap never shuts off. Like during our entire conversation and meeting, there's been some money made for me. Yeah. How much is a question, but there's been some, and probably a 3-figure number.
Yeah,
at the very least a high 2-figure number in our 2-hour conversation.
Right.
And when the tap never shuts off,
mm-hmm.
right? I don't need to run a hose and to fill a bucket. Instead, I can just sit the bucket underneath the faucet, soda stream, and it never shuts off. It just boop, boop. Eventually it'll fill up.
So let's say now, do you aspire to get to level 4?
I think that is inevitable. And like I say, I always, when I'm being very humble, I say if I become like a multimillionaire, that'll be an accident. right? And I'm half serious because I don't do things for money. I just recognize the power it has, and I refuse to go back to the situation where I don't have that power, and that freedom is, Naval Ravikant said it best. He said,
Who said this?
Naval Ravikant. Naval is a great
guy
on Twitter, Silicon Valley dude. He goes, a taste of freedom will make you unemployable. I can't go back to being normal. Like I just can't. That would, to me, I remember not having a job was a sign of failure. Now getting one would be for me. Like, so I can't, go back and do that. But what I think is going to happen is that I understand what to do and how to do it, and by naturally the way I interact with people and how I interact and present myself, I'll continue to grow as well. And I'll continue to have these ideas, and I'll work with them and use them. And I, because I try to do everything as best as I can, that includes even selling and marketing. Just because even if my goal isn't to make a bunch of money, I'll tell you what it definitely is not to do a bad job, it's to do a great job.
Right.
The side effect of that tends to be a high income. So for me, that's what I think will happen. And that will just naturally kind of drift me there. Because the thing, like, once you get out, that's just something I said too, is like a lot of guys stay at level one. You stay at the level of your ambition. Once you break out, you stay at the level of your ambition
right.
most of the time, because it's I think for most people, not just in terms of what they've done, but how they continue to live, it's very challenging to grow and expand out unless you're building like a company, and then you just you hire people.
Or there's some higher purpose of something of some kind. You said level 4 is about where you're leaving, talking about impact and legacy, right?
Right, where you're trying to do something. And for me, that might not even be a monetary thing. If I'm able to work on what, like for me, what is important and what I like is atmospheric science, and what I'm looking at going back to grad school.
Is that a physics thing?
Oh, atmospheric science is just a fancy way of saying meteorology, which is is a fancy way of saying the weather, right?
I gotcha.
Okay, so that's what's really important, and I really am interested in that, and perhaps oceanography. Okay, I've done school broke. I will not do school broke again. So when I'm in that situation, I'm not gonna be living like a student, whatever. I want to go, but I'm gonna be busting my ass because I'm gonna be really interested in the work and what I'm there for, and I'll be able to devote full energy because I've built and set up all these systems. My money's fine, everything's coming in, no issues. But right, so I'm doing a thing not for money.
Right, yeah. That's something I thought about. Is like like I'm interested in now, because when you're in college, you're just trying to get through. The purpose is the job. It's not really to learn. Yeah, that's what my experience was, right? And now as I'm learning about different things, like a couple years ago, I went and took a class at a church. I mean, listeners of my podcast know it. I went and sat for 10 weeks at a church. My coworker and I were having a conversation about religion, and she's like, "Well, why don't you come to my church? And they have a class, and you can ask any questions you have." And it's just like, I started studying like Christianity as like a hobby, like church history and all that stuff, right? It was like something random, just it was just cool to, like, a cool thing so now I'm thinking of like, man, there's all this other stuff that I was interested in, like, because when I was an undergrad, I was interested in like political science or things like that, but I didn't do it because I was like, well, that's not, what kind of job is that going to get me, right? And you do something for a job. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate that. Would you say it sounds like most people though would be comfortable at a 2? Oh, if you get to a 2, you're not gonna want to go to a 3. You'll be like, all right, I'm just chilling. You're a cruise control.
If the average person could somehow wake up and be at a 2, let's use me. If the average person could wake up and be in my position, I'm not. I mean, I'm not even a top 1% earner. Like, and I know that because you can go to this little site and put in your income, and it'll tell you what percentile. I'm like for America, I'm like 7% maybe.
Okay.
Which is still great, right? But the way I do it is what's more appealing. Not putting in 70, 80 hours weeks, but writing, being myself, doing what I enjoy. Let's pretend the average person could just wake up and trade places with me. I think, let's assume they sustain it and maintain it. Yeah, I think they'd be pretty happy and pretty comfortable. There's just, there's a certain mindset that comes with everything. So you could do it like being able to turn on a faucet and just generate 10, 15 grand whenever you need it extra. That's awesome. But that comes from that's years, man. Some guy asked me about the strategy for building links to my website. And I'm like, man, I can tell you what I do, but you're not going to be able to do it. I do a bunch of podcasts, and every time you do one, I have them linked to your site, but you got to be interesting enough to be on a podcast. So I don't know what you've done with your life so far, but
right.
Let's hope that's there. 2, guest posts. Hopefully you're a good writer and you're willing to do the work to give someone else that content. 3, I'll often give people retweets for links. So hopefully you got a big enough Twitter presence to help them grow and get something out of it, and in return they link back to you. And 4, occasionally I'll buy a really solid high domain link that makes a big difference for my site. So I hope you got the money and you're willing to invest in yourself. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to invest 30 grand into your website, your project, and your brand? Do you have that vision? Oh, I don't know. Do you stand on something? Can you do something well enough to write about it and sell it? All of these things come together, and that sets up the situation. So if you, yes, this is a nice position. And if I never make it to 4, I'm not going to be unhappy. That's just,
yeah.
Right. But
99% of the population would probably trade spots with you to be a 2.
Man, more than that. Like, more, absolutely. Because dude, one of the things I say about level 2, that's when you stop being able to relate to people. And what I mean is, okay, I know most people's problems stem from not being able to change their location for whatever reason. Someone is harassing them, they can't just leave and quit that job. They don't like somebody, but they still have to interact and deal with them. Or they don't have enough money. They got a bunch of financial problems they got to deal and cause stress.
Right.
Level 2, man, you just right. Like I can't remember the last time I was like, where I was like, here's an unsolvable money problem. The difference is now, I'm not saying the problems don't arise, but I can solve them.
Right.
And part of that is being able to look long enough down the horizon to see, okay, some things are shaping up to be rough in 4 months. I might need to make a decision and do a thing now and start putting something together to sell and move. All right. Or it's like being willing to do that work too. Yeah,
right.
When people are willing to do that work, it's a lot easier.
I got you.
Because the safety is there, and you got to be willing to take risks. And there's been a lot of risk. Like, this could have turned out poorly in a number of ways. It could have been, people might not like my writing, book could have flopped, whatever, right? I could have got myself suspended off social media. Who knows? There's a lot of ways this could have gone wrong.
Yeah. I guess my camera dying is a sign that we should wrap this. I have one last question for you, and the last, they'll see the video, just you talking.
Oh, that's cool.
It's all good.
It's all good.
iPhone is Mr. Reliable, but I knew that, that charger did not, ran as long as it could. But anyways, you said your worst would be to go back. Going back to a 0 is like worst case scenario at this point. You couldn't do it.
Man, ooh, you ever see The Matrix?
Man, it's been like 20 years.
Hey, you should watch it again. I love that movie. But there is a great lesson about trying to go back into the Matrix when Cypher breaks out.
Yeah.
When Cypher's out, he starts cutting a deal with the agents, and we're like, yeah, so you can get me back in? Yeah, we can get you back in. You take a pill, you won't remember anything. Can't even make you who you want to be when you go back in. Yeah, that's not how it works. And it didn't work out for him. You can't. I couldn't go back in. I would just figure out. Like I would be so miserable, and then I'd always be plotting on how to get out. But with my mindset, I would have had to make so many mistakes to even get into that position. I can't even imagine it.
Yeah, so but there's that possibility that if you're a 1 or 2, you could go back to a 0. So you can't be careless.
Right.
So
You cannot be careless.
You cannot be careless. All right, man. Hey, this is a real treat. And I'll tell you what, man, if I knew this podcast was going to be this much fun, and I would have driven to Pittsburgh just for this without the Cleveland whole stopover and everything. So I hope people can benefit. How can people find out more about what you're doing and like?
If anybody on the internet wants to do a thing on the internet and their name is Ed Lattimore, I'm sorry, because I have everything. My website is edlattimore.com. My Twitter is at Ed Lattimore. My Instagram is Ed Lattimore. My Facebook is Ed Lattimore. So just type in Ed Lattimore and you will get any number of ways to find me and interact with me.
All right. Well, I appreciate, man. This, again, is a real treat to have you. Hopefully we can, I wish you continue success and growth, right? And I really see that what you're doing here is an inspiration for people, right? That, thinking about like how they're living their lives. Like it's like when you think about lifestyle design, right? That's what I see a lot of the benefits is like you wanted to do stuff, but we're limited by time and money. And how do we break out of it? And I think this is something as far as from a point of view of being able to do it fast too. I think what's amazing is this didn't, in a grand scheme of things, this wasn't like a 20-year project. This happened like within a relatively short time.
Yeah, I never think about it that way, but I suppose when there are people who work a lot harder with a lot less to show for it at the end of the same time period. So,
all right, cool. Well, I'm gonna flip this camera to me, and hopefully it gets me in. All right, for our listeners out there, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Casts. This video will be up on YouTube, and you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Apologies for the video, folks. The last second failure on my camera, but it is what it is. All right. With that being said, this is Mahin for my special guest, Ed Lattimore, signing off for Sultans and Sneakers. Peace.